And what's for intellectualism and romanticism? We must note that this all was mostly higher and middle intelligentsia, and that was the specific of Soviet spirituality and Soviet esoteric community. And what can we say on Dhirendra Brahmachari's visit to USSR and his participation in the cosmonaut training program? We cannot say for sure whether it was or whether it was not. This visit is mentioned both in Russian and foreign journals, and Indian as well, but it is not known for sure when exactly did it happen. It should have been happened somewhere in the 60s, but no exact dates. Soviet secrecy is the most secret secrecy. We hadn't found any photographs of Dhirendra with cosmonauts, but we can say for sure that it did happen. So during the Soviet cosmic program, Dhirendra Brahmachari came to USSR and opened the first group on classical yoga teaching. And surely this group consisted of not only cosmonauts, but also those who were participating in the cosmic program. There was the Professor Brodov, of whom I will tell you later, Gennady Grigorovich Statsenko. He was working on development of some engineering equipment. Nowadays, in our yoga school, Hatha yoga has greatly changed, but if we take a look at the practice of the school of Gennady Grigorovich Statsenko, they very similar to Yoga Sukshma Vyayama of Dhirendra Brahmachari. But at that time, the book Sukshma Vyayama was not published, and we already had that exercises from somewhere. Small pranayamas, standing bhastrikas, and some special mudras, all of this was directly borrowed from Dhirendra Brahmachari's school. In this sense, parents of our school is the school of Gennady Grigorovich Statsenko, and the grandfathers of our school is the school of Dhirendra Brahmachari. So this is our lineage. And lots of people were taught in Brahmachari's groups. As we've mentioned in previous parts of our lecture, within the Western yoga, much more influential there were Iyengar and Pattabhi Jois styles. And what's for the Russian-speaking domain, that would be Shivananda and Brahmachari schools, although not many are those who mention these lineages. So, this is the generation of classics of Soviet yoga. Here are these four men who founded the basis of all the yoga which was later. And for now, they concentrated all the yogic spiritual flows within themselves. Vasily Brodov, the professor of Eastern Studies, who obviously either met Brahmachari or at least such an information has its witnesses. Again, I don't know him personally, he passed away a long time ago. Brodov had even managed to go to India and study there. Anatoly Zubkov, the man who managed to penetrate India and had great studies there within the Shivananda tradition, and he became the first popularizer, maybe the first after Brodov, of yoga in USSR. Gennady Statsenko, my teacher, who, when he met tradition of Dhirendra Brahmachari in 60s, started practicing yoga, and across the times he synthesized the esoteric spiritual avan within his own unique school. And Lev Teternikov, the first Soviet tantric. His lineage goes through some Soviet yogin of Stalin period. I don't know him well and I didn't bring his photo, that's why. Thanks to these people, we have all the yoga which exists across the territories of Soviet, post-Soviet peoples for now. In 1970, with the support of Vasily Brodov, there was published a movie, Indian Yogis, Who Are They?, which can be seen on YouTube. Nowadays it looks funny in some parts, but in other parts it's quite good. Of course, the funny parts are when the fat Soviet scientists make their conclusions on yoga. But the journey to India, which showed many yogic procedures, had inspired many people. And in fact, this movie legitimized the idea of yoga practice within the Soviet space. Vasily Brodov describes his situation when he came back from the war. He was very sick and ill, and after the several decades, he feels himself just fine in his 78 years. That's what for I am greatly thankful to Indian people who gave this gift to the humanity. In this lecture, we should also mention the popularizers of healthy lifestyle. Yuri Nikolaev, the popularizer of idea of fasting, who was the descendant of Porfiry Ivanov. Being himself a physician, PhD, he created the first clinic of fastening, and actually all that we know now about fastening as the cleansing procedure, we know thanks to his experiments. Well, truth be told, what we call now fastening, he called the healing unloading therapy. He was quite an interesting person. Here we must also mention Vladimir Andreev, whom a picture we don't have here, but he also made a great contribution in this sense. Anatoly Zubkov. On the top we see the picture of his teacher from the Shivananda tradition and one of his articles. He tried to publish himself everywhere possible. In Science and Life, in Youth, in Literature newspaper, in lots of places he always clearly made his point. And we may say that he was not the deep specialist in yoga. Now it's very easy to reach that level. But slowly, step by step, he got Soviet people used to the idea that yoga is good. This is 1973. The first Soviet tantric, Lev Teternikov. He was one of the founders of couple yoga as well, one which transformed now to acro yoga. This was the man who in those Soviet times, 70s and 80s, popularized the idea that sex, emotions, love do not contradict spiritual development, and to the contrary, the true spiritual development is available only for the one who deeply comprehends one's own sexuality. At those times it didn't seem revolutionary. It was the whole blast of a bomb. His seminars, being chaste for our view, at those times seemed monstrous. There people touched not only their own bodies, but also bodies of somebody else. And the idea that you can look straight in the eyes of your partner seemed almost an orgy. Of course, he was largely criticized for this, but surely he made a great contribution to Soviet yoga. Gennady Statsenko. In 1989, this man made an unprecedented experiment. He tried to create the teaching facility which could train yoga on 5-day week basis. First it was the Moscow Academy of Yoga and then the Kharkiv Academy of Yoga. I was the one who participated in Kharkiv Academy. 1989 was the most unclear age in Soviet times, and in those times he said, let's gather and exchange knowledge. The first year of studies in the academy gathered 500 people. Almost all the new came students were extrasensorics, practicing healers and yogis of all the kinds. And there we started playing, experimenting, exchanging knowledge and trying practice on our own and on each other. In fact, academy proliferated for 3 to 4 years. And when the Soviet Union started collapsing, all this became dramatic and unclear. And this experiment made a huge contribution to all the later yoga and to the worldview itself. I'd say that from my old generation of yogis, there couldn't be any man who wouldn't either learn in Statsenko's academy or somehow linked its knowledge, or at least exchange practices through third parties. In this sense, this man made a truly great contribution to global popularizing of yoga. Zubkov's group were 10 to 15 people, while Gennady Statsenko's school was colossal. It had around 60 departments. That was a true school, where there were not just students and instructors, but there were people who exchanged their knowledge. The school had its methodical basis, which was developing all the time. Surely in mid-90s there became a gradual decline, but we must say that Statsenko, being 87 now, still has 6-hour seminars each Saturday and Sunday, and he feels himself just fine teaching each day in his university. Here is his picture 25 years ago, and I participated in that photo session. I must say that he looks right like this 25 years later, which is a quite mark of experience and yogic success.